episode 129 of the podcast. In the first part, we'll talk about adolescent dogs. They're not adults, but they're not puppies either. In the second part, we'll talk about the function of behavior and how knowing what happens directly before and directly after will help you to change that behavior. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. I want you to imagine this scenario. Imagine an owner came to you with a puppy and you have been working with this puppy from the very start. Everything done right, little puppy visits, never push the puppy too far, you're doing everything great, the puppy is so sweet, and you're like, perfect, we did this, we talked to the owner, this dog is so good. And then one point, this dream customer comes back with their puppy, and the puppy's a little bit older, and suddenly things aren't good anymore. What? What happened? Right? So we start thinking something went wrong. What happened to this puppy? What's going on? I think what happens is, and it's really, really common for us to forget, between being a puppy and being an adult is this whole adolescent phase. Sometimes we think that we're all done training when we're training with a puppy. And I know owners do it a lot and non-trainers do it. Even if you are in the animal field, you think, I did it. We're done. Ta-da! Right? Taught the early stuff and now we're done. And sometimes that's true. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking that you've always done it that way and it works, it's because many dogs will continue to improve at a steady rate and they're going to take all that knowledge we started as a puppy and just adapt. Many dogs are going to be fine. But, and you know here it comes, right? There's a flaw in the logic that they're all going to be fine after puppyhood. It's because puppies become adolescents. 6 months to 18 months is about the general guideline for adolescents. And they may look like adults, but they aren't yet. They may look like puppies, but they aren't anymore. They're in between. Now, we tend to vilify adolescence, and we do it with dogs and we do it with people. We tend to really vilify this whole in-between stage, but we need to see it in terms of difficulty. From the dog's point of view, they want to explore. They want to do new stuff. They don't necessarily want to cling to you anymore. We tend to vilify adolescence. We tend to see it in terms of our own difficulties instead of seeing it from the dog's point of view. And this is likely to sound very anthropomorphic, but we were, or maybe still are, because I'm like the oldest 18-year-old I know. Some of us are still teenagers. In humans, we recognize that teenagers aren't young adults, but they're also not little kids. They're trying hard to be adults, but they need help and guidance. And I want you to parallel that with our animals, okay? They're not puppies, but they're not adults. And they don't have the patience level of adults. They can be really impulsive. They're not at their adult potential. And they can be really quick to get angry or frustrated. And we need to remember that when we're working with an adolescent dog. As a trainer, I'm constantly prepping owners for their adolescent stages. Okay, people try to tell me, oh, we don't need to work on whatever. Let's say it's come. Or, yeah, come is a good one because the puppy wants to be with the owner all the time. And I have to tell them, well, yeah, he comes when you call right now. He comes when you call him right now because he's kind of clinging to you. But in 2 months, he's going to be a different guy. Right now, he has a desire to stay close. And in another couple of months, that pup's going to be more interested in exploring than being next to you. And I cannot tell you how often owners say to me, wow, I'm glad you warned us because suddenly the puppy that I thought knew how to come with me and would just wanted to stay close isn't interested in following me anymore because he's more interested in the rest of the world. And it's really, really common. But we kind of forget this when we're grooming. So when we have a dog on our table, we need to be thinking about their age as part of this and that they can be really frustrated and get really bored, and they don't necessarily want to be handled by every stranger. And it's not that we did anything wrong when they were a puppy, or that the owner did anything wrong when they were a puppy, but training continues. Training continues. And I want you to think about that adolescent dog. Certainly needs a lot more training, but even adults need more training. My last dog was 14 when she passed away, and we still actively practiced all sorts of training stuff. Because why not? I'm going to share treats with her anyway. Why wouldn't I spend some time training? So these adolescents, very different than the puppy stage, but not adults. And I want you to think about other things that are happening to them at that time. Sometimes they're really, really clumsy. They don't have much coordination. Many of them are at a coat change phase where they might be really matted even if the owner thought they were brushing well. And sometimes, sadly, that's also when we get them for their first grooming, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I don't know how you guys feel about the mixed breeds that are out there, but many of them are being sold by people who do not understand the breed that they're mixing. And so these dogs are coming in matted and needing a significant amount of grooming the first time they get groomed, which is as a teenager instead of as a puppy. So I want you to be thinking about this adolescent phase is so normal. It's so normal. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be silly. They might still be really, really energetic and playful in a way that you think they should have outgrown it, but they're still kids. They're not adults yet. And so when we have a little bit more patience, and we expect it. Expect a puppy to change into something that's a little bit rowdier. Now, I'm going to share a little story. The last dog I had was such a sweet, sweet little Disney princess of a dog, another border collie. I remember one day I was at the animal hospital. I used to be a vet tech. I was at the animal hospital feeding the dogs in our boarding section, which is a very small scale boarding. And they were all barking, and she was barking too. And I looked at her and said, "Quiet." And she looked me dead in the eye and let out a couple more rah, 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 rah. I was shocked. This is not my dog. What the heck happened to my dog, right? This is adolescence. That's just what adolescent dogs do. I opened the run and I put her in a down stay in the middle of the room. I was shocked. I was like, oh, down stay. And I fed the rest of the dogs, and she laid down there in her down stay and just looked at me like, oh no. I should not have barked at you like that. I realize that's very anthropomorphic, but it was so out of character for her. But it is such a teenager thing to do. It's such a teenager thing to do. So when we think about this adolescent phase, there are lots of things happening, and it's normal for dogs to be different. Now, another thing that happens during adolescence is that many dogs experience a fear imprint stage, someplace around 8 months, which, if you think about it, is often about the time that dogs get spayed and neutered, which is an unfortunate timing for that. But you think about like 8 months old-ish, things that they might have thought were fine before, they might find really frightening. Know ahead of time that this could be extra frightening. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this dog is broken or that somebody did something terrible or why is he so afraid of this? I've been working with this dog for 3 months already, or, it's just part of adolescence. And for us to be patient with the adolescent dog, just be patient. Be patient, be instructive, continue to work toward calm, comfortable, and cooperative, continue to give them a little bit more space if that's what they need, and help build their skill set for the 15 years of grooming that they're going to need to have. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes, and tell all of your friends. Behavior happens for a reason. A dog's behavior is a response to what's happening to the dog, around the dog, and inside the dog. Now, the behavior that you may find troublesome or inconvenient, as well as the behavior that you really like and want to encourage, all of those behaviors are a response. They're a response to what is happening in that dog's life and in that dog's world at that time. So What's happening in that moment could be internal or it could be external. Some examples of internal would be what's happening with the dog's physical body. Is the dog in pain? Is the dog tired? Is the dog excited? Is the dog just waking up? External have more to do with the environment and other things around the dog. That could be things that we're doing. That could be loud noises. That could be someone clipping toenails. That's what's happening to the dog, around the dog, near the dog, outside of the dog. That's external. Now, the behavior follows that. So different dogs will display different behaviors to those things, whatever those things are. So if you think about behavior as a response, it makes a difference, because then we can start thinking if we want to change a behavior, we need to know what the dog is responding to. That's why it matters. That's why we care about it. Because if we just want the dog to not do something or to do something, we need to know why they're doing the thing in general. It matters because we gather clues about a behavior if we want to change it. If we want to change a behavior, if we want to change what the dog is doing, we need to know what they're responding to. Now, here's another piece of that behavior puzzle. What happens after the behavior? After the dog does the thing that the dog does, what happens right after? Because behaviors have a purpose. Was it useful to the dog? Was it pleasant for the dog? Was it helpful for the dog, for that individual dog? Because behaviors that are pleasant or useful or helpful will probably happen again when those things happen again. When that dog needs to respond to something, it's going to do something that was helpful or pleasant or worked. So when we start thinking about the behavior puzzle, we have to think about what happened before the behavior and what happened directly after. And that's what's really neat about behavior. You try to change how the dog responds to something and what they get from it. How cool is that? Now, I will say, this training concept, this behavior concept, has some fancy schmancy words to it. This is about applied behavior analysis or the functional behavior assessment. Also, antecedent behavior consequence chains. Now, I know that probably sounds kind of tacky for those of us who are not animal trainers, who are groomers. We're like, oh God, that sounds a little tacky. But really at its base, what it is when you see a behavior, that's a dog's response to something. So think about, what is the dog responding to? And why did the dog do that? What function did it serve? That's why it's a functional behavior analysis. And the antecedent behavior consequence, antecedents are things that happen before a behavior. Consequences are things that happen after a behavior. Antecedent behavior consequence chains. And what that does is it helps us to put a framework around what a behavior is doing, why it's even there, and then we can go back and try to change it. This is just a helpful tool. This is a tool that many of us as trainers use so that we can kind of look at what's going on and get a different view from the dog's point of view because we can't really look into their heads and decide what they're thinking, but we can take a look at when things happen, why things happen, and what the outcome was. Now, I'm also going to say, here's the tricky part. I'm also going to say, when I am doing dog training, I also run owner behavior through this framework too. Why does the owner do what they do? What function does it serve? And when I'm talking to groomers, I think that we also can throw our own behavior through that framework. So if the dog starts to wiggle, that for us would be external. That's the thing that we're going to respond to. Dog is wiggling. Let's make it more specific. You are trying to trim an ear, and this dog is wiggling. What do you as a groomer do? Well, you're probably going to do what's worked for you before, or what makes you feel like you're making progress. And then if you do make progress doing it that way, you're going to repeat that over and over and over again. So if I want to change a groomer's behavior, I need to give them something else to do when the dog is being wiggly. All right. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but bear with me. Bear with me. Now, if a dog is being a little bit wiggly, we have to think about what the dog is responding to. The dog is responding to maybe the way that we're holding, or maybe something else going on in the room, or maybe the tool that we're using and the sound that it makes or a vibration that it makes. Because even shears have that scissor sound. So we need to think about, what is this dog responding to? And what does it get from being wiggly? What did the dog achieve by being wiggly? And maybe the only thing is that the dog is trying to escape. They don't have a goal, perhaps they're just trying to escape. But in the past, wiggling made us stop. Now, here's a tricky part. Here's a tricky part, guys, because I see groomers do this a lot. They stop when they're finished, even though the dog is wiggly. Because I trimmed it. See, everything's done. You're fine. But the scissoring stopped because of the wiggling. From the dog's point of view, wiggling would be really effective. If we stop while they're wiggling, if we don't take time to circle back to calm, comfortable, and cooperative, that dog could be thinking, I struggled, and she finally stopped. Because the dog doesn't know how much trimming we were going to do. The dog has no idea that we completed our mission and our goal. So the dog is just responding to, oh God, what's happening around me? And this is my attempt to make it stop. So if the wiggling is continuing until we're done, sometimes we're actually sending a very clear message. Yeah, keep wiggling, because you know what? It'll be done soon. Now, when I look at a groomer's behavior, now if we're holding on to an ear and that dog is wiggling, and now we are going to respond to the wiggling. Here's where choice comes in. We're humans and we can listen to podcasts and do continuing ed and talk to people, but here's where choice happens for us. Dog is wiggling, what do we do? And what outcome are we looking for? So for many of us, myself included, many of us used to or were taught to hold on and say, no. So I want you to be thinking about, if we're holding on and saying no, and the outcome we're looking for is a dog who stops wiggling or wiggles less, then that behavior of us saying no was served pretty well, right? It worked. It was helpful. So why do we continue to do it if the behavior that the dog is showing, the thing that we're trying to change, doesn't change? Now, this is where we get into a little bit of human psychology, I gotta say, which I find fascinating too. Dog training is all about teaching people. In case you guys didn't know that, dog training is all about teaching people. So if you're a groomer and you're holding an ear and the dog starts to wiggle and your response is, no, that's enough of that. And the dog continues to wiggle. Why do we continue to do it? And sometimes that's because it addresses our feeling of, I'm trying to make that stop. Even if it didn't make it stop, it addresses our feeling, our need to act, even if it didn't work. And sometimes we get going on that and we start thinking, okay, imagine how bad he would have been if I wasn't there sternly telling him no. If instead we can look at our own behavior, that stern no, and say, okay, with this dog, it did not lessen the wiggling. So what else can I try? And that's where people training comes in, and training ourselves to try something else and to take a critical eye and just look at the facts. Strip it of the emotions for the moment and just look at the facts. I was holding this dog's ear. He started to wiggle. I said, no. The dog continued to wiggle. I'm holding this dog's ear and the dog is continuing to wiggle. What else can I try? And will that work? With this dog on this day, in this particular moment, because behavior is in the moment. It's a response to what's going on right now. And it could be memories of the last time it happened, but it's still happening because of right now. Right now, in this moment. Even if that dog has a long history of, say, barking and growling and stuff when we'd reach for nails. Maybe this dog has a long history of that, but they're only doing it right now because we're literally reaching for nails. The behavior analysis, functional behavior analysis, what this does is it gives us the ability to kind of take a look at the behavior, what drives it, where it comes from, and then we can adjust. We can adjust things. Maybe this dog is fine if we do things at a different step in the process. Maybe this dog is fine if we do nails in the bathtub. maybe this dog is going to be better if we try something different, right? So when we look at behavior, we're also looking at what happens before and what happens after. If you'd like more information, you can find me at Chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group, Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast, or the Facebook page, Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.
If you're ready to go beyond the podcast, and I hope you do, I've made it really easy for you. If you go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step, you'll see all of the options. There's the Scholar Lounge community, there's the Modern Grooming Professional certification, there's Master Canine Stylist and Professional Canine Stylist diploma testings, there's the Behavior Lab for coaching and private one-on-one sessions with me, and of course the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program. So go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step.